welcome to PT Live. We have with us this morning Mark Richardson, who is Director of Investment Services for Colliers International in Poland. We're going to talk about the real estate market, but before we do that, Mark, you have quite a strong Scottish accent. Do you find that people understand you when you're talking in Poland?
I hope so. I speak a little bit of Czech, so I often speak with a Czech accent when I'm pronouncing Polish words. Oh, really? So I'm not sure if that helps or not, but
people can pick this up that you're speaking with a Czech accent.
Sometimes dzień dobry, all the verbs like potrovat, dekovat, it's very similar. Podobny język.
Okay. And which part of Scotland do you come from?
Edinburgh originally.
Okay. So you've been in Poland for a few years, you've observed this real estate market, or in this region anyway, and the real estate market, I mean, everyone can see it's expanding really, really fast. Is that the case? Is that the case across all the sectors?
Yes, I think you just have to step out into Warsaw and see the skyline. It's forever changing, and I've been living and working in the region now for 18 years, and the changes are unbelievable. You walk out onto the street and you see just construction and cranes going up everywhere. So I think it is fair to say that the market is still incredibly dynamic and fast changing.
So even for a hardened real estate professional like yourself, it is still quite amazing what's happening, because it seems like if you go away for a month from Warsaw and you come back, and the streetscape has sort of changed, hasn't it?
Sure. It is incredible, and I think it's relentless, and you just see it as I think the property market is just really responding to the growth in the economy and the lack of unemployment. The sort of drivers of high wage growth. You're seeing retailers responding to that. You see office cranes and construction responding to new banks seeking new employees and so on. So it's incredible.
But you mentioned retailers, because my understanding is that retail is a little bit different in terms of what I've read is that in Poland, retailers are doing quite well, but globally there's a kind of sentiment against, especially investment sentiment into shopping centres, etc. Is that the case?
I think it's fair to say. I think that sentiment, investor sentiment, is driven by possibly what's happened in the US, the UK, and to a lesser extent in Western Europe, where there is an oversupply of shopping centres. And I think the investors' perception is of that sector is that it's going through a structural change as we all know it, and as a result, how are retailers and how's the retail market in Poland changing to reflect that. I think you've seen a lack of liquidity in shopping centre transactions as a result of that, because less foreign capital investors feel comfortable investing in the sector. Although that said, at Colliers now we're starting to see a number of transactions come through the market.
Investment transactions?
Yes, now as investors become more comfortable with the revised pricing and so on of centres.
I mean, are they differentiating that in Poland it seems to be because of maybe more spending power amongst Poles, etc., the spending figures, consumer spending figures seem to be very healthy. Are they kind of responding that Poland is different to other countries?
I think Poland is similar to other countries, but the dynamics are different in terms of the economy, the consumer spending, and in the markets means that actually that the retailers are actually buoyant. What is happening is we're starting to see is a lack of investors being able to secure or buy offices and industrial, and therefore opportunistic.
Well, there's not enough product.
Yes, absolutely.
So there's a lot of investors looking for the product. This has been the same all the time in Poland for the last 20 years, 15 years it seems.
Well, it's fair to say it's the same globally.
Yeah.
However, certainly in Poland there's a lot more products, investment product being developed and coming out to the ground, and you see the office towers being built. Shopping centres, there's less shopping centres now being built, but what you are seeing is a polarisation in the market between the good well-performing shopping centres and the smaller, perhaps poor-performing shopping centres, and in this instance size really does matter. So the challenge in the sector is if you own or have a shopping centre that's perhaps not the most dominant in the town, is what do you do with it? And then the second challenge then is to retailers is how do they respond to the changing sort of consumer habits. I mean, you see online sales in Poland typically to account for 5 to 6% of retail sales in Poland, whereas that compares to say 20% in the UK, 9% in Germany, and an incredible 37% in South Korea. So I think retail is here to stay, and it's how investors see that as an opportunity to perhaps attract and buy higher yielding properties.
Okay, but what about, let's say back to the office market, these many office buildings being built, is there the tenant demand for this? I mean, to sustain it for maybe 2 or 3 more years or longer?
I mean, if you look back at Warsaw 3 years ago, the market in 2016, I think there was a vacancy rate of empty buildings of like 16%. So 16% of all buildings were vacant. Today that stands about 5%. And if you look at the new cranes and sort of construction that's coming up, there's a supply of something like 800,000 square metres, and most of that is already pre-leased.
Really?
So you're looking at significant leases with big occupiers like Citibank, Morgan Stanley.
Is that because people, I don't want to, just in a nutshell, is that anything to do with the Brexit effect, or is it nothing to do with that? I mean, people talk about it and no one really knows if it's the case that companies may be coming over to Warsaw, because we've seen some big major companies coming to Warsaw from Western Europe.
Yeah, I think if you look at the banks, the Citibank, Standard Chartered, and so on, who open here and expanding, I think it's for job creation and cost saving. I think HSBC announced this week they're cutting 35,000 jobs globally. I think they're going through structural changes as well in that sector. And I think what the banks are doing is responding to cost savings and the digitalisation of a lot of banks, and actually coming and looking and realising that actually staff here, programmers and so on, bankers can actually, the low cost of employment, lower salaries means it's actually quite a good cost effective place to be. So a lot of the back office and middle office from the banks are actually now relocating in Warsaw. I don't think that's driven by Brexit. I think it's a factor,
sure,
but it's not. Yeah.
Okay. In terms of the investment money coming in the last, recent few years, we've seen a lot of Asian investment coming in. That seems to be more significant. What are the Asian investors seeing in Poland? And is that like the whole of Asia, or are there particular countries which are most interested?
Well, a lot of the Asian capital has come in some direct and some via sort of other sort of platforms and managers. So often when people are talking about the Asian capital, they're realising that actually it's a German fund manager or a UK fund manager that's actually managing their money on their behalf. But that said, I think Koreans are generally looking for core investment products, long leases, safe, stable income, whereas perhaps other investors, maybe like the Filipinos, from Malaysia and so on, maybe looking for a bit more sort of high yielding, more attractive sort of returns. And with buying those kind of properties comes a little bit more risk, maybe a little more vacancy in the building and so on.
And what about the logistics, warehouse and logistics market? Because of all the sectors, I mean, they're doing well, but logistics and warehouse seems to be exploding at the moment. I mean, is the sky the limit in this, or how does that look?
I think the sky does seem to be the limit, and it does seem to keep going, and Poland is an attractive place for these occupiers and companies to actually trade from. So Amazon, for example, serviced Germany from Poland. So you see requirements there. I think 2015, I think that the general take-up for new industrial space was something like 1 million square meters. Today you're looking at 3 times that, so in 5 years it's a multiplier of 3 times the amount of space that's being built and taken up, and that's going to continue again this year and forever. We look at Colliers, we're seeing a huge number of requirements and tenants' demand for new space, in particular to the western Poland, where you're seeing now Tesla opening a car manufacturing plant near Berlin, and of course then the occupiers looking to service that will also look for production space near the sort of western Polish border.
And let's say if you had your own money, what would you, let's say I gave you like 10 million euro, where would you put your money in the Polish real estate market? Would you put some in residential, mix it up, or would you definitely go for one sector, one location?
I definitely would invest in residential, and I personally will invest in residential, as I believe in that, and that's where more and more the home ownership is a key driver in this economy. I think I would buy prime CBD offices still. You look at relative to Western Europe and where rents are and the rent levels are, I buy well located sort of office buildings next to good large transportation hubs. And also logistics.
When you say transportation hubs, what do you mean exactly?
I mean, if you see what's happening in Warsaw, I think the city hall and the city are actually encouraging a lot more reliance on public transport. So you're seeing the connection out to Western Warsaw with, I think, 5 underground metro stations are planned. 3 are opening up. Yeah. Yes, that's right. 3 are opening up in, I think, the next 2 months. So you're starting to see a lot more sort of investment in the infrastructure, in the highways and so on. So I think well-located buildings next to transportation hubs are the way forward, and that certainly seems to be repeated trends that we've seen in the UK, Germany and elsewhere.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. It's a quick snapshot of the real estate market.
Thank you.